Greetings, blessings, and welcome to the Fuel for Your Journey podcast, where it is our mission to bring you topics, testimonies, and conversations that will fuel your journey through the seasons of life. The host is Dr. Sally, aka D Life Mentor Coach, woman of faith, mother, Christian author, faith-based life coach, and wellness advocate. The vision of the podcast is to support others in gracefully moving through life and only accepting God's best and drawing them into the Lord's presence for renewal and healing. Discover more about Miss Sally and her mission at www.dlifementor.com. Join us for the live recording on the first and third Thursday of each month. We'd love to take your questions, dialogue, and have you be a part of the Fuel for Your Journey community. In the event you miss us live, catch us on your favorite podcasting platform anytime. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook as Fuel for Your Journey or Instagram at Fuel for Your Journey. That's at Fuel, 4, URJRNY. Interested in being a sponsor, guest, advertising an upcoming event, or partnering with your product that will benefit our audience? Contact us at info@dlifementor.com. We look forward to partnering with you. And now, here's another empowering episode of the Fuel for Your Journey podcast.
Greetings and blessings, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Fuel for Your Journey podcast. My name is D. Sally, and I am the podcast host. I want to welcome those who are joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those who join us on a regular basis or listen to the playback on one of the resources that are available. Tonight is another exciting conversation that we're going to have. I'm excited about it. The title is actually Mind Over Matter. I took some time to look up the cliche mind over matter, and basically what that means is that you would use your willpower to overcome physical problems. That means you would have a determination and draw on that strength and that power to overcome physical problems. As it relates to mental health, as we know in the news, you see time and time again different people that life may succumb to the unfortunate fact of suicide. We see in the news different people experiencing depression. And all of those things, in one way or another, are very close to home. I would say, I don't know the statistics, but I know a lot of us can relate to, if not having experienced it yourself, someone who wrestled with things of the mind. So that's what drew me to make sure that we have this conversation on tonight and enlist some help from someone who is an expert in the field. If you've ever experienced fear, anxiety, depression, or even stress, which 99.9% of us have experienced some level of stress, then you know that the mind, which is the brain, is a powerful organ. It's no wonder that in the Word of God, there are several scriptures that are there to empower us as it relates to being good stewards over our mind and understanding the power that it has. Specifically, Proverbs 23:7 says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." So the things that we experience on a daily basis that we come across in our lives, if they are not channeled properly, if they are not processed properly, they have the power to influence our mental state. So it's extremely important that we make that a priority. So I'm not an expert in the field of mental health. I only have my personal experience to go by. So today I have an expert joining me. Her name is Dr.Brianna Gaynor. Dr. Brianna Gaynor has a passion for mental health and has noticed time and time again the healing effects of her work. She received her doctorate degree from the Georgia School of Professional Psychology in 2009 and has been licensed as a psychologist in the state of Georgia since May 2011. During her internship year, she was also trained in faith-based therapy, and although not a traditional Christian counselor, she has learned how to incorporate faith-based therapy and all faith-based therapy techniques for those who the clients that she has who express a willingness to hear the word of God. Currently, Dr. Gaynor owns her own private practice, which is called Peace of Mind Psychological Services, where the focus is on conducting psychological evaluations and providing therapy aimed at the diagnosis and treatment of various mental health disorders, including depression, anxiety, trauma, and behavioral disorders. She is also a speaker who focuses on advocacy through discussions aimed at demystifying the stigmas related to mental health and providing practical tools to help people manage their own emotional well-being. Beyond her work, Dr. Gaynor has experienced significant loss in the past 2 years, which has drastically changed her perspective on life and on her work. In 2015, she lost her best friend, which is her mother, Janice Sherry Gaynor. With no blueprint on how to navigate this type of loss, she learned more than ever what it meant to rely on the Lord alone. It is often through the most difficult situations that we grow and discover strength we never knew that we had. Because of the love of God and her amazing village, she learned how to move through the grief process and personally experience the value of seeking mental health treatment. This has created a renewed passion to support and bring light to mental illness so that those who suffer with mental illness or mental health diagnosis, grief, or any emotional struggle know that they are not alone. What they are experiencing is not abnormal and that healing is possible. So now I bring to you Dr. Brianna Gaynor.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Brianna?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Good. You're welcome. I'm excited to have you because this is a conversation that we can never talk about enough.
Absolutely.
And so we need to get this information out there so that people can make this something, like I mentioned before, we pay attention to our physical health, but we don't make our mental health a priority, and make it a priority not when we become, overwhelmed to the point of having a breakdown or having a mental health moment, but make it a daily practice. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things you said earlier I totally agree with. There are so many examples in the news of celebrities, of people who struggle, and the truth is you don't know what someone's going through just by looking at them. And a lot of times people are shocked because you never know what someone is experiencing, because there is such a stigma about mental health, and it's the same as going to the doctor. It's a part of you, and if you don't deal with it, eventually your feelings will deal with you. So it's so important.
So true. Yeah. So true. So let's talk a bit about, I have some points here, some things that I thought were critical for us to talk about in this time that we have together. So give us your experience, or the points that you would like the audience to hear as a mental health professional.
Well, I think one of the things that you said is stress. So we all experience stress. So a lot of times when we think in terms of any kind of mental health diagnosis, so something like depression or anxiety, what I get a lot in my office is a lot of times people like to self-diagnose, or, of course, there's Dr. Google, so people feel like they have so many different diagnoses.
Yeah.
And the truth is a lot of times the symptoms that encompass a diagnosis are things that we all deal with. So that's not really what makes it a problem. What makes it a problem is when it starts to affect your daily functioning. So we all experience depression at times. We all have experienced worry or have problems focusing or struggled with just traumatic things we've experienced. But the problem sets in is once it starts to affect your daily functioning, meaning it's affecting your ability to work or your ability to go to school or your social relationships, you're beginning to withdraw and you're becoming or you're struggling to do the things that you would normally do in your daily life, then that's the point where it's important to seek some help. And I think the other part, too, is that I think sometimes we can look at asking for help as a sign of weakness, but it's actually a sign of strength. It takes a lot more courage to seek help and do something different than to continue to do the same things that we're always used to doing because we're such creatures of habit. So I would say, is it affecting your functioning? And for a time, could it be time to do something else when what you're doing is not working? There's nothing wrong with seeking help for short term. And that doesn't mean it's a forever thing, but why not get the help that you need if you do it for any other aspect of your life, such as your health issues?
Your doctor's visit.
Yeah, exactly. We do that so easily. So why not? Yeah.
I was going to say, some people, probably a good percentage of the population, don't make it a habit to actually run to the doctor, when they feel an ache or pain or something's happening that's abnormal. But I know for myself, I don't waste any time going to the doctor when I see that something, is going awry or showing up that's unusual that I may not have ever seen before. So, yeah, like you said, it's key, to I guess, should we have a regular regimen of going to see or talk to someone, even if there's no particular trauma or situation going on?
Well, so I think it depends would be my answer. I think it depends on the level of support and the coping skills that you already have. And so there are some people who have good support systems. So some of the questions I would say is, in terms of support, do you have people who you can talk to who will not only listen to you and validate you, but who will also kind of call you out and tell you when things aren't right, who will challenge you, who want the best for you, whether or not that's something that you may agree with or that you may be doing at that point? Are these people who are really going to push you to do better? So that's important. And then what kind of coping skills do you have? Do you have a good work-life balance? Do you have other things you do outside of work? Are you getting adequate sleep? And are you able to manage your frustration well, or do you get into a lot of arguments and fights? Are you having more trouble kind of pulling yourself back or managing stress or shutting your brain off when you're going to sleep? So I think that if there are times when you notice that your stress level, you're not able to manage it, then there's nothing wrong with going and getting some short-term help. Because the good thing about that is that this is someone who is not attached to you. And so they're not worried about hurting your feelings, or sometimes family can be the complete opposite and say a lot of things that can be insensitive, but they're completely non-biased, and they can really help you sort out your thoughts. And sometimes it's just that we really don't even know how we feel about something. So having a sounding board and being able to have a place where you can process what you're going through and make really difficult life decisions is always a great thing. So I think maybe those can be some of the markers.
And as far as, working to end the stigma, especially in certain cultures, people haven't seen someone going to a counselor or having to talk things out. So it's something that's out of the norm for them, so how do we end the stigma, which, as we see again with what's going on in the world now, or should we say what's coming to light? because I'm sure things have been going on. You know, it just may have been swept under the rug, or people may not have been as verbal with it. So, how, you know, what steps do you think that we need to take to end that stigma?
I think normalizing is probably the biggest thing. I think we all probably can think of a family member or two who probably had some things going on, who probably could have used some help now, right? So people who probably had some kind of diagnosis or some difficulty, and maybe in our families we never talked about it, we never dealt with it, and they just kind of stayed the way that they were. So I think normalizing the fact that there's one thing if you're struggling significantly with mental health, but there's another thing that we just all struggle sometimes, and what's wrong with getting help for what we need? You know, what's wrong with that? So really normalizing the fact that we all could use some help at some point in our life, and that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you or you're crazy. That's a huge one. Yeah. You know, like you walking around in a straitjacket and foam coming out of your mouth. That's not what mental health really is, and I think that a lot of that has been really sensationalized. So I think, and also just looking at the media and how people who have struggled and never really sought help, how that turned out. Some of the richest and most successful people kill themselves. So what does that tell you? There's something more to life than just maybe the things that we're pushing to try to attain. And the truth is we all go through things. And so I think just normalizing the fact that it's okay for everybody to ask for help is a big deal. And I also think that this generation of children and teens are just much more open to it. It's more of just something that they do. And so I kind of feel like us as the older generation should just kind of take suit. They're not ashamed to say they're going to therapy or that they need help or to ask for counseling. And so in that way, we kind of should kind of take their lead. And if they're asking to seek help, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, very much so. So, like you said, the adult population can take a page out of the book of the younger generation. You know,
not in a lot of things, but definitely in this.
Right. As it relates to mental health and being okay.
They're totally okay. They have
taking your brain to the doctor.
Going to therapy.
So true. So true. Our brain. You know, just taking in, you know, watching things on TV, seeing things happen around us, that can affect our psyche, that alone, you know.
Absolutely.
So it just shows how, like you said, the normalcy, making it normal, a normal part of life. And just like you're going to the physical doctor, just like you're going, you know, to the Word of God to get your spiritual health built up, you also have those individuals who have been trained, like yourself, that we can go to and have unbiased conversations and get empowered to get those tools to be able to cope, you know, with the trauma that may have been experienced, the situation, processing of the situation, or so forth.
Because if you think about it, how do you learn to cope? You learn through life experiences. No one's born with coping skills, you know. Those are just things that are kind of trial and error. So why not get that, especially if there are things we notice ourselves continuously struggling with?
So true, so true. I know having gone through some things years ago, just in life period. One was like you, and my condolences to you in the loss of your mother.
Thank you.
One of those being my husband passing away. So, you know, I experienced that grief as well. So, and that happens. It's a fact of life that people are going to, you know, leave us. So, you know, that alone is a reason to go and talk to somebody. I personally, in the beginning, did not do that. And, you know, after the fact, realized, I need to talk this out with someone. You know, and let's talk about the strong woman syndrome.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. As I'm listening to you, I didn't either for 6 months, and I remember too, because you know you lose people, but you know this is a whole other realm because it was my mother. That was it was me and her against the world, and so I was experiencing so many different things, and I remember being at work and being good, and then as soon as I got in the car, I would just break down, and I just didn't want to leave the house, and I was struggling, and I remember thinking, what is wrong with me? And so I went to this group called Grief Share, and they just really talk about the grief process and kind of what's normal, and that probably was the start for me, because I had no idea what was normal, and I really was like, what the heck is going on with me? Like, so to just to hear that this is normal, it's okay, other people experience it. And again, I think that's the whole thing. We don't realize that other people are experiencing it because we keep it so quiet. So how would you know?
Yeah.
But there's a freedom in knowing that you're not alone.
Amen. Amen. So, everything that you said was on point. And let me ask you a question. At the time that happened, were you operating in the mental health field already?
Yeah, I was. So, yes.
And that's another
graduated
thing.
in 2009, and and I had my practice for about a year, which I really think saved me, because with everything I was going through and with all the anguish just in my mind, I was like, well, this is my business. I have to do this. I have to make sure it's okay. So it kind of was a motivator. But it's interesting because there are times when I'm in therapy, so I'm doing therapy with people, and I'm saying things, and I'm thinking, are you doing the same thing? So it's not necessarily that I do all the things I say. I'm almost laughing at myself sometimes because I'm thinking,
it's the knowledge,
you need to be doing that. And you telling this.
Don't we all, right?
Yeah.
But, I think, it's when you're, how can I say it, being a professional or being an expert in a field does not relinquish you or me or anyone else who is a servant to others from going through those things.
Absolutely not, yeah.
The Bible says there is no respect of person.
Yeah.
At any moment, someone else experiencing, we could be experiencing. So we should never look down on that. And just because you're going to an office and a person has, psychiatrists or therapists on their door, that doesn't mean that the next day they aren't going to see a therapist or a counselor themselves.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's a misconception in itself as well, that and I guess, it makes me think about being a parent, how sometimes a parent can say, what is this the cliche, do as I say and not what I do, or type of thing. It's just no respect of person. We all could be in a situation at any moment. And you gaining the knowledge as a therapist or counselor or coach, does not mean that you don't have your own struggles or processes that you're going through.
Absolutely. Absolutely true.
So I think that's important to know that that's something that would help, break the stigma that knowing that you're going to this office to talk to this person. They have the education to help you, but that does not make them a perfect individual. And they can, get in it with you and walk you through it, and help you along your way. Wounded healers, so to speak.
And I think that my clients, that's like they light up when I bring up anything personal, and I'm like, well, yeah, so I understand that, because they love that, because it's like you're human too. You go through things too. Yeah. And I'm telling you to do this because I understand, because I've done that too. It does not work. So there's something about that too that, really makes people feel like, okay, you get it because you've actually been through some things and you understand very uniquely what I'm going through.
I think the key to any type of relationship where one person is helping the other is for that authenticity to be the number one priority, because the individual is more likely to let their guard down, if they know this person sitting across from me is not judging me. They truly, like you mentioned before, have my best interest at heart. and, you know, they're going to help me through it without judgment. You know, they're not any better than me, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that I mentioned before is addressing matters before they escalate to breakdowns and suicidal thoughts. Do you have any experience in dealing with, you know, individuals going through nervous breakdowns and suicidal thoughts, and anything you want to share in relation to either of those?
Well, so I've heard the term nervous breakdown a lot, and I always wonder, I mean, I think that encompasses a whole lot, so it's super broad, and I think a lot of times that is probably related a lot to suicidal thoughts or just feeling kind of out of control of yourself. So, yes, I have had experience with that. So it's one of those things that we absolutely have to assess. And so when someone comes into the office, we say that everything is confidential except, and one of the limits is if you talk about wanting to kill yourself or an identifiable victim. And so we are really assessing how often you're having those thoughts. What are your thoughts? Do you have a plan? Do you have access to actually make that plan work? How probable is it that you're going to do this? Is there someone who could, like, let's say someone is saying they want to take pills. If it's a kid or something, I'm going to talk to the parents and see if they can remove those kind of things. Can we avoid you having access to those? And if it's a situation where they have an active plan, their intent is significant, and even if they don't necessarily have the means for what they're talking about, then that's a situation where they need to be hospitalized because they're not safe. And so the hard part is it really is reliant on how honest the person is with you about where they're at with that. But I would say that if you are experiencing those kind of thoughts, even if it's just been a passive thought, so if it's a passive thought, it's not necessarily something that you need to be hospitalized at this point, but it's definitely something where you need to talk to someone, and we need to create a safety plan, and we need to help you to feel safe, because what can happen is if it's not addressed, inevitably it can become worse, and eventually you can be successful in killing yourself, and that's the thing that we don't want. And a lot of times if someone is a harm to themselves or others, then, again, that's a time for them to be hospitalized. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's because in the hospital you're getting intense treatment, and they can help you to get stabilized. And so once you're stabilized, then you can come to outpatient therapy and we can get more work done. But I would say if you're having those thoughts, seek out help. Let's talk about the things that we can do to help you feel better. And if not, let's identify a higher level of care, because you don't have to feel that way. And it's so possible to help improve that and to get you to a better place. It's not just inevitable that you're always going to feel that way, but just be open to the opportunity or the chance that you could heal from that.
That's good. So, you know, I had a situation a couple of years ago with a loved one that was contemplating suicide, and it was one of the most difficult things I had experienced because there was nothing. They had lost all source of hope. That's what it appeared to be, and it was like no matter what I would say, it was like a brick wall. You know, trying to beat through a big brick wall, trying to get through to them to make them realize that they needed that help. You know, I don't want to say what will lead someone in getting to that point, because it sounds more like it's because, you know, the warning signs weren't addressed and they didn't get the first level of help that they needed. You know, a lot of times people say when you have a loved one that's experiencing suicidal thoughts, that the first thing you should do is contact the suicide hotline?
Yes.
With me personally, and this is only my experience, that's my disclaimer, I did contact the hotline, and I didn't find, it may have been the person that I got at that time, but I did not find that they offered a lot of assistance in guiding me towards the next step. So is that generally the recommendation that's given to someone who's being an intercessor, so to speak? They're acting on the individual's behalf? Or is there anything else that they could do?
Yeah, so that's one thing. And a lot of times, though, that's something that I'll also give to the person who's experiencing the thoughts, because they're generally supposed to be trained in kind of helping you talk through those situations. But a lot of states also have mobile crisis. So if you look up like mental health mobile crisis, what happens is you'll call them, you'll tell them what it is, and they'll actually come out to your house and they'll assess the person. So that's also an option, because it's someone who can come, who's a professional, and who can really ask the right questions and have a level of expertise that you don't have. And of course, if you needed to get the phone number, I'm sure you could call 911 to get the mobile crisis in your area. But I think that would be be a really good thing, just because they can actually come to you and they can do a full assessment, because it takes the pressure off of you. You know, this is your loved one. You're already emotional. You're not sure what to do. You're trying to help them. You're trying to talk to them. So it really helps to enlist someone, again, who's non-biased, who can come and really look at the situation from a different standpoint. Another thing is, if they're willing to get in the car, you can take them to your local hospital or local mental health hospital, and they'll do an assessment there and identify if they need to go to the hospital or if they need outpatient therapy. Again, taking the pressure off of you and just really assessing what needs to be done. Because I think as family members, you're kind of at a loss. So not to put that pressure on yourself, and know that there are resources of people who can really say this is what they need, versus you trying to figure that out on your own. Because when someone's depressed, logic is not really what they're thinking. And whether what you're saying is true or not is really about how I
don't hear it.
It's my perception. My perception is my truth. Whether it's truth or not, it's my perception and it's my truth. And that's it. Yeah.
Well, something that I noticed recently, they have it where you can use your cell phone, certain apps now where you can connect to a therapist via the phone or via, I don't know what tools they use, where you could have a conversation with someone. I guess there's a fee involved, but I'm not absolutely sure. Do you know anything about those resources?
So I've seen that, and then there is something called telemental health. So there are therapists who will do sessions with you online. I would say I'm a little hesitant about that. I don't think it's a bad idea if someone is stable. But if someone is not stable, there's a lot that happens with nonverbal body language and just being in the room with someone that's really hard to assess when someone is not with you. So those are definitely things where, let's say, if someone can't get in or they're traveling or they're in school, where it's good. But if someone is struggling more significantly, you really need to be able to see them, because if something happens, you can't really identify if they're safe. There's so many other things that you can't really control or even try to help if they're not in your face. So
for someone who may be contemplating that as a first option, it sounds like it's better to actually contact an office like Dr. Gaynor has, to actually make an appointment live. Absolutely. Now, obviously, if it's like, okay, I need this now, if it's an emergency thing and then we need to say what your next step is, that's fine. But that should definitely not be the ongoing mode of treatment, because when you're depressed, you tend to isolate. And so it's important for you to actually get out and be active and force yourself to do things. That's a huge part of improving your mood. Excellent advice. Thank you so much. I want to give you time to share more about who you are and what you do. I know I did read your bio, but for those who are in the Atlanta, Georgia area, that's where you are, correct? Yes. Who may be in need of a therapist, someone to process things with. Dr. Gaynor is in the Atlanta area. So share more about what your practice offers and just any other insight that you may have into the topic of mind over matter and mental health.
So the name of my practice is Peace of Mind Psychological Services, and we are in Johns Creek, Georgia. So we are in North Fulton. There are 8 of us in the office, so I have 4 other therapists. So the therapists specialize in trauma, anxiety, depression. We do marriage counseling. We work with children as young as 4, so a lot of any kind of behavioral issues, parenting, ADHD, kind of runs the gamut of a lot of different areas that people tend to struggle with. And so the goal of Peace of Mind is really to be able to serve the whole family. So I wanted to make sure that we had people who could serve younger children, who could serve teens and adults, and knowing that one person can't do it all, we have people who can do it all combined so that the whole family could come in, everybody could get what they need. One of the other important components of the practice is psychological evaluations. So basically, if there is anything that someone is struggling with academically or just emotionally, not sure what's going on, or if there's a possibility for a learning disability, or does my kid have ADHD, a lot of those kind of diagnostic questions and really wanting to know what you need to do to help this area get better, we do psychological evaluations to address that. And we've also started to do a lot of bariatric evaluations. So a lot of times when you get bariatric surgery, you have to get an evaluation before you're cleared. So we also just making sure that they're ready for that journey. So that's a lot of what we do. And for me, my big passion is just educating people about mental health, how important it is, and how necessary it is just for life. So that's something that I am really working towards this year, just being able to speak and just kind of spread that message all over, just to let people know that it's okay to ask for help and that mental health is a real thing and that it's important, and it's important that you take care of yourself. And so in terms of this topic in general, I guess hopefully the big takeaway is it's okay to ask for help. At some point in life, every one of us are going to go through something. And so when you're struggling, when you're having a hard time, when you're not sure what to do, why not just seek the help of a mental health professional? What I would say is that sometimes people can tend to be skeptical of mental health professionals, and if you are not totally open to the process, then it's probably not going to work, because the person can be the best therapist in the world, but if you're not open to it, that's a huge component into how successful it is. So it's really important to at least be open to giving it a chance, because if you're not open to it, it's a two-way relationship. It's not going to get better. So being open to it, and also the relationship is important. Just like with anything else, if I don't feel connected and comfortable with you, I'm not going to talk to you about the most
I was going to say
personal
that, to be
things.
open
I'm
and
just
share.
not.
Right.
And so it's okay if it doesn't work out the first time. Be open to find that connection and know that even if the first person you meet doesn't work out, that doesn't mean that there's not a possibility that you could connect with someone else later. But know that it can work. And I am living proof of that as a psychologist doing therapy every day. I go to my own therapist, and it has made a world of difference, And a lot of the things she points out that I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I came here for. Why are you calling me out? But it really
it's what you needed at that moment, right?
It's absolutely what I needed, and there are things that I would not have really recognized if she hadn't pointed it out, and it's helped me to be a better person, to be better in relationships. It just helped immensely. It's helped immensely.
You know, it's amazing. My best friend she's a doctor now. She's I guess psychologist. And, you know, she's been in training, but it's been like 7 years. It's been a 7-year process for her. Now she just became a doctor. And I brought that up to say that as she grew and learned, you know, and excelled in what she was training to be, you know, just when I wanted to have a normal conversation, it turned into, well, are you sure such and such? And I'm just like, what are you talking about? So you want that person who is, like you said, is going to call you out and bring something to your attention that could be the furthest thing from your mind. But, you know, if you're open and authentic in your sharing, That's the most effective way that healing is going to take place. We have a few callers on the line. I want to, since they've joined us tonight, if either of you have a question or a comment or would like to add to anything that's been shared tonight, press *6 on your phone to join us, and we will receive you. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for joining. You have a question or comment?
Yes, I just have a comment. My name is Thomas, and I would like to say what Brianna said, I believe, is very true, because a lot of people do be experiencing problems and situations, and some don't look at it normal as to ask. But one thing she said that very stuck out to me: at any point of your life, everyone will need help, and that really struck home.
Yes, I agree. Dr. Gaynor, do you have anything else to add to what the caller shared?
Oh, thank you. I think it's true. So I appreciate that that struck a chord with you, because hopefully it's something that you can keep in mind, and that other people keep in mind too, that there's going to be a situation and it's okay to ask for help. And hopefully it gives people permission to feel okay about that decision.
That's awesome, Brianna. That's awesome. And if I'm ever in the Atlanta area, I'm personally from New Jersey, but if I'm ever in the Atlanta area, I will come and check you out.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, caller, for adding to the conversation on tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question, comment they'd like to share with our guest tonight? Press *6 on your phone, and you'll join us in the conversation. Well, Dr. Gaynor, it has been such a blessing, this conversation, which, like I said in the beginning, I felt was very needed for this time and in this hour, and I really think that you added some meat to the conversation that needs to continue. It's definitely not a one-stop shop conversation, and I'm glad that you were able to join us and tune in on tonight. I want to give you one last opportunity to share, anything that's on your heart. If someone's listening in and they're at the place where they've listened to what we've discussed on tonight, and based on what they've heard, they realize that, this is a critical moment for them to reach out and to find someone that they can talk to and express their, innermost concerns. What information or advice would you give them, and how to go about seeking the help that they personally need? Because, whether they would be able to identify it as a trauma or stress or whatever other type of mental health factor, what would you recommend to them as to how to begin that journey?
Well, I would say if you're even considering going to a mental health professional, do some research. So there's a website that I always refer people to, and I refer people in my life to. It's called Psychology Today. And so it's almost a way for you to kind of screen therapists and see who you feel like may be a good fit or not before you meet them. So you can go onto the website, put whatever it is you're struggling with or what you think the issue is, and you can see the therapist's profile, you can see their picture, you can read what they're about, and it really can give you a good sense of maybe this is someone I could connect with or not. And so it's just a way to start to get a feel and start to just see if this could be someone you could be comfortable with, and whether you would even be open, because sometimes you can just kind of get a name and you don't even have an idea of who you're meeting until you're there. So that's a good way to kind of pre-screen and just kind of get your feet wet and see that there are possibly people out there who may deal with the things that you're struggling with, maybe someone who you identify with. The other thing, though, that I really want to stress is whether you're struggling or whether you know someone who has experienced something difficult and maybe you don't talk about it, it's just important to ask. I think that sometimes people will feel that when people are going through difficult things, they just shouldn't ask because they don't want to bring it up. I had that experience a lot, I think, after my mom died. I'd had a friend who was like, well, I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to remind you, as if I forgot. I didn't forget, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that we feel like we don't want to touch it because it's too
like
sensitive. We
eggshell.
want to hurt you. I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to make you feel bad. And I actually saw an interview. Christophe St. John was a soap opera star who died recently. And one of his co-stars was saying the same thing. His son had died by suicide a few years ago, but he was like, we don't talk about it. We just try to bring up the mood. But he never forgot. And it's important to just ask people how they're doing because you never know what difference that could make. It could make no difference at all, but it could make all the difference in the world. Starting those conversations, and I think the big thing is just talking about what's going on, talking about how you're feeling versus I'm fine, and you're not. Being honest about that, because I think the moment you're open to talking about how you're feeling is the moment you can start the process, and you'd be surprised at the people God places in your life to start to show you the steps to take. But it takes just saying, yeah, I'm not okay. And be okay with asking people because, trust me, they haven't forgotten. And you may make all the difference in the world of them trying to just hold all their feelings in, giving them permission to say, yeah, that must be really hard. How are you doing? I think we need to just have more of those conversations, period, and just be more honest. Just be more honest about how we're feeling.
One of the things I tried to share on social media this week, some things about the mind leading up to our conversation. And one of the things that I was led to share was to check in with yourself, check in with yourself, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, different things like that. And now you've added check in with, I know there's a meme out there that always says check in with your strong friend. All of us have some sort of weakness. And while we can be the strongest person that everyone knows, there's always something that can make or break each and every one of us.
Absolutely.
So it's so important, like you said, to have those conversations. How you doing? No, how you really doing type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
and be open.
And it's funny because I think that's one of the conversations that actually helped me. After my mother had died, there was a woman, and I don't even know that we really talk now. We pass in the hallway, and I think one day she asked me, we hardly talked, and I said,
wow,
not good. I lost my mother, and she had lost, I think, her husband and her parents, and she told me about Grief Share. And then that started that. So if I had not opened my mouth, it's, and so then I could go to her and ask her questions, and it just was exactly what I needed in that season of my life. Sometimes it's just about opening your mouth and,
and bringing the guard down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because nobody's okay every single day. You're just not. It's not
right.
And that's okay. But that's okay, It's okay.
Be able to admit it,
Absolutely.
and not log in it or, just come out of it in some way. Come out of it in some way. If that's picking up the phone, whether it's, doing something that you thoroughly enjoy, whether it's being quiet. I know for me, my place of strength as an introvert is in that quiet place and reading the Word and spending time with God. And while on the outside looking in, somebody may think, well, what's going on with her? I haven't heard. For me, I am building myself up again, whether it be because I poured out or whether it be, like you said, I'm not having a good day. There may be that one or two individuals that I make sure to text to, say, pray my strength, going through the day or whatever. But for the most part, for me, it's communing with God, reading His Word, listening to a sermon, something that can pull me out of what may be going on. And having those faithful few that you can reach out to is so important. So this has truly been a very informative conversation. Almost don't want to stop talking, but we're not going to prolong the hour. Okay. You've given so much great feedback on tonight. I wanted to, I know you shared about how individuals would go about looking up a therapist like Psychology Today and all. But for those of you who are in the Johns Creek, Georgia area, feel free to contact Peace of Mind Psychological Services, where Dr. Brianna Gaynor and her team aim to serve you and to partner with you in your mental health. They're at 9810A Medlock Bridge Road, Suite 103A in Johns Creek, Georgia. And the website, which Dr. Gaynor shared before, is peaceofmindpsychology.com. Dr. Gaynor, did you have anything else you wanted to share?
That's it. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and we really try just to give people inspiration, give you things to laugh about, give you information about mental health. So please follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Peace of Mind Psychology. And it's P-A-C-E, not P-I-E-C-E, so peace.
Okay. Yeah, we want peace. That's a good.
Yeah.
Peace. So thank you again for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you for those who tuned in. Thanks to those who added into the conversation. I like to close out the broadcast with just something empowering. Today I'm going to read from Philippians chapter 4, and this is the Message version, verse 8 and 9. It says, "Summing it all up, friends, I'd say, you'll do best by filling your minds and meditating on things that are true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse. Put into practice what you learned from me, what you heard and saw and realized. Do that, and God, who makes everything work together, will work you into his most excellent harmonies." Well, everyone, we've reached the end of another empowering episode of the Fuel for Your Journey podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Brianna Gaynor.
Thank you.
And thank you to our faithful listeners and committed supporters. Until we meet again, remember, just as a vehicle can never get very far without stopping by the gas or filling station, neither can we. Our Father in heaven desires that we seek him with our whole heart and be fueled daily through his word and a personal relationship with him. His presence is the greatest fueling station of them all. Take care and God bless.